today we're going to start breaking down our mindfulness. And it's really interesting to me because I trained in DBT in 2013. And mindfulness wasn't near as much of the lexicon as it is today. Not as many people were doing, Eastern practices. It's just really, the wellness has evolved into mental health space, especially as we have a better understanding of trauma and nervous system dysregulation, and just that we need the integration of those two spheres. But still, a lot of people understand, okay, I have an idea of what the concept of mindfulness is, but I don't necessarily know how to take it from the yoga studio where somebody's keeping my attention cued to my own day-to-day life. And I think Marcia, better than anybody else I've ever seen, does a great way of breaking this down into a formula that you can apply anywhere, anytime. And so that's what really draws me to the DBT mindfulness perspective, is it's the real life application of mindfulness that I then can go out and refer to even when I'm not in my best state of mind. So she breaks it up into 6 different skills, and there are 3 what skills and 3 how skills. Our what skills are verbs, so they're the actions of mindfulness. Those are observe, describe, and participate. And our how skills are adverbs. They're how we go about doing our actions. And those are 1, mindful, effective, and non-judgmental. And at any given time, we're going to choose 1 of our what skills and pair it with all 3 of our how skills. So today we're going to cover our what skills: observe, describe, and participate. So we start with observe. It's the primary level. It's the one we come back to when we're getting overwhelmed. When we think of our evolution as human beings, observe is also our primary instinctual way of being. All other animals don't have the linguistics that we have, and so they live primarily in this natural observing state. We can observe all sorts of different things. We can observe sensory data, so sight, smell, touch, taste, and hearing. We can observe our thoughts, what's going on in our brain right now. And we can observe that literally, I am having the thought that I am hungry, or in metaphor, I am observing that my mind is choppy, like an ocean when the storms are coming. We can observe our emotional states. I am angry, happy, sad, in love, jealous, envious. We can observe the action urges associated with our emotion states. I am angry and I want to slam all the doors in my house. We can observe the expression of emotional states in other people. So body language and what they're showing us. Now, here's an important caveat from DBT. A lot of us had complex childhoods that required us to pay very close attention to the adults in our lives so that we could make accurate predictions about their behavior that protected us from their wrath, dysfunction, chaos, etc. That was a survival skill in childhood, and we were probably really good with those specific people because so much of our safety depended on it. But does not mean we can observe the emotional state of others. We can only observe what they are showing us. And so instead of saying to someone you're angry, what made you mad? Saying something like, I'm noticing that you're frowning is something up. Giving yourself space for interpretation and to be wrong can really help in intimate relationships and friendships, instead of always assuming that you know what the other person is feeling. Thoughts, urges, sensations, emotions. Yeah, okay, so those are the things we can observe. Observation is the practice of meditation. It is complicated in that it is simple to understand, but hard to put into practice. It is a skill set that the more we practice it, the better we become at entering our observer mind. And yeah, we want to build it up, and when we're confused or distressed, it's where we start out with our mindfulness. So our second skill is describe. Describe is what we do most of the time because we're a linguistic-based community. And when we think about observe and describe as humans, we do them very rapidly, right? One, bang, bam. but they are two separate things. And so that noticing state is different than the state of labeling. And when we do describe, we want to think of it as labeling. We want to stay in non-judgmental language. We want to evaluate things as bad or as good, because either way, we're adding emotion to situations. We want to stick to neutral descriptors that keep us in the gray, because most of life is lived in the gray. But again, when we come from those chaotic households, we often are trained over time to live in one end or the other. We get into the black or white and we bounce back and forth between them. So when we practice describe, we want to add like the couch is brown. The president that I did not like is no longer in office. Just very simple, but not emotion laden. And that can really be a helpful part of our journey. When we are feeling overwhelmed or anxious, we want to get in and observe and describe our thoughts, because usually it's our thoughts that are fueling our anxiety and keeping us in that loop of thought, anxiety, thought, anxiety, thought. It's when we notice our ruminating, that's something a lot of my clients struggle with, is getting in these thought loops in their head where, it just builds and builds and builds and builds and builds. And maybe you've spent 30 minutes or an hour like really in that awful place before you even recognize that that's occurring within your mind, and you have some power to control it. So the third level of our mindfulness is our participate. And the ultimate goal of DBT mindfulness is to get to as much of life as possible in full participation. It's, as we master and we become more in control of our emotions, our reactions, our responses, and our thoughts, we get to be more fully present to life. We full participate naturally in the things we already really love. Things like our hobbies and our passions. It's really easy to get wrapped up and spend a whole afternoon doing something that is fun and joy bringing to you, right? We also can easily find full participation, or what we refer to as flow, in work environments if we are properly matched with our career, right? So, I have a job where I have one-on-one interactions, no outward stimuli, 1 hour at a time. And that is the perfect amount to keep my concentration fully plugged into what I'm doing at any given time. And I know a lot of my clients are also working in alignment with their purpose in a way that their job does, keeps their brain activated at the right level, which is really important for neurodivergent people, because our kind of optimal activation level is different from the average neurotypical. Full participation is when we are one with the activity, we are engaged, our mind isn't wandering to thoughts of oh, here's my grocery list that I need to be doing, as soon as I finish this activity, we got to run to H-E-B and get this. Or oh, this is so much fun, but it's going to be over soon and I'm not going to be as happy. Full participation is just being present to the moment and being in the flow with life. And so that's what we're really working up towards. But it's where we're shaping towards. And mindfulness, like values, is something that is aspirational. We're building our skill set. We're making the choice at any given moment. Do I want to turn towards this way of living or towards the way of living I already know that hasn't, fulfilled me in these exact times yet? And so that's what we're really doing. So I encourage you to take some opportunities this week to practice, observe, and describe. You can do this in a 5-minute journaling activity where you set your timer and you just notice what you're thinking about. So think for a minute, journal for a minute. Think for a minute, journal for a minute. And that is also adding in your describing. When you go back and you look over what you've written, notice how much judgmental language is there or how much neutral language is there. Because again, that's what we're really aiming for with our describe. And then also look for those moments this week where you are fully engaged and participating in life. Because that's the sweet spot. And we want to notice when we're in the sweet spot so that we can replicate it more often and take it and do it more frequently. So next time we'll talk about our how skills, and so our adverbs, and get into that non-judgmental stance of effective and one mindful a little more deeply. See you then.